Hello, I'm Nick Dykstra, and I'm going to be presenting today on the Romanian media environment. And just a couple of things I wanted to bring up here before I get into the nitty-gritty of my presentation. The first thing that I found interesting is that the population of Romania is approaching about 22 million people. And the second item then is that there are about 22.9 million mobile phones in Romania. So currently there's about a million more cell phones than there are people. So as Holland and Mancini stated in their book on the comparison of media systems, there cannot be an understanding of the media without first understanding the character of the state. So in reviewing the nature of Romania's media history, a standout feature is quickly realized, as for a better part of the past century, Romania had been a part of the Soviet bloc and lived under communist rule. With this structure, the country had also developed a reputation as a draconian governance under the rule of Nicolae Ceausescu. However, with the fall of the Soviet bloc in the late 1980s, Romania too would find itself at a transitioning point that would lead to great changes in their government, social, and media structures. Naturally, with the restrictions on speech and media being lifted as a part of this political shift, the Romanian media structure grew rapidly and emerged as one of the most vital sectors of Romania's economy. Unfortunately, with this relationship to economic structure, the growth of Romania's media system would be diminished and tested due to the pullback that was caused by the Great Recession in 2008. As a part of this pullback, some Romanian publications reported that advertising volume had fallen by about 70 to 80% from year to year, causing the quality and wages within the sector to sharply drop as well. Nevertheless, as much of the world has recovered from the financial crisis, Romania's media once again started to steadily press forward, and their annual media market growth rate has pushed into double-digit percentage increases. So in staying consistent with Hallen and Mancini's idea that we can't understand the media without first understanding the state, I wanted to expand a little on the importance of the state's history in this situation, and how that impacts the media environment. To start with, if you don't know already, Romania is a former part of the Soviet bloc, and only started the transition over toward democracy and a free press in 1989. Because of this, there is very little, if any, reliable data to be found on the Romanian media system before this period. As a result of the development of a free press, the growth of journalism as a profession has grown at astounding rates, reportedly jumping from about 2,000 journalists in 1989 to about 20,000 trained journalists in just a little over a decade. Therefore, with a newly found freedom of press and increasing numbers of journalists, it only seems natural that media outlets should only display rising growth numbers as well, which is certainly the case with the rise in daily newspapers, as the publication numbers nearly doubled in the 3-year stretch between 2001 and 2004. But even with the tremendous growth rates, television has maintained its status at the top of Romania's media environment, as nearly 2/3 of advertising revenues are still generated through television. However, as it is the case with much of the world, the rise of internet users is an element that is creating waves in Romania's media structure, as 13 million people, or about 60% of the population, is now able to receive their news through online media platforms, which still leaves plenty of room for digital media growth. As I had mentioned on the previous slide, television takes home the lion's share of advertising revenues. However, to give you a better idea of Romania's media landscape, I wanted to provide an illustration that broke down how Romania's advertising market share was divided, and for comparative purposes, how these numbers relate to surrounding countries like Ukraine, Hungary, Poland, and Bulgaria, which, if we look at the data, there appears to be a lot of similarities between the countries, other than Ukraine, as all of the others show similar ratios, with TV taking home a majority of the market share. Next, We'll shift into an overview of Romania's media system based on the Howland and Mancini framework. At the core of the Howland and Mancini framework, for comparing media systems, there are 4 primary dimensions that are utilized for the evaluation of national media environments for comparing media systems. By using this scope, Howland and Mancini were thus able to better find the similarities and differences between states and to find patterns within this data. As you can see, the 4 primary dimensions are structure of media markets, political parallelism, professionalism in journalism, and the degree of state influence on media systems. Starting with the structure of media markets, newspaper circulation rates fit the characteristics of the Southern Europe mold. This relates to the 70 people per 1,000 statistic that was shown on an earlier slide. Additionally, newspapers reach nearly 60% of men, but only about 46% of women. Moving on to the next step, political parallelism, we can see that the National Audiovisual Council, which is the primary monitor of Romania's media, is viewed as highly politicized. In fact, they're known for manipulating the granting of certain licenses to different media outlets. Next, we have the professionalism in journalism. And in Romania, journalism is often thought of as a hobby, instead of as a legitimate line of work. This then leads to journalism being more frequently taught through on-the-job training rather than through professional educational routes. The next step, degree of state influence on media systems. We see that former President Băsescu deemed the Romanian media as a threat to national security. Additionally, strong governmental influence was detected in the media during the 2000 general elections. With this happening, it came to the point where the media was no longer viewed as impartial in the political process, but rather as a contributing actor. Moving on to Romanian political context and how this influences media systems in the country. According to Howland and Mancini, the earlier versions of political journalism were viewed as something that should influence the public's opinion in relationship to political causes or parties. In fact, many publications were established by political actors, political parties, and/or financially supported by them. However, a contrasting form of journalistic virtue developed in the late 19th century as political journalism shifted toward a role of becoming more neutral in tone and separated from political interest. Unfortunately, this has not yet developed in Romania, as owners of media companies treat media outlets as tools of political or economic influence. Additionally, Romanian politicians are said to have controlling interest or ownership role in most of the national and local media outlets, or control them through intermediary and other financial controls. So this type of behavior can also occur as journalists are paid commissions for selling advertisement contracts. Naturally, there is a spike in sales during campaign periods when journalists offer article space and advertising space to political figures. So what roles does the media play in Romania? In Romania's current state as a transitioning democratic society, there's a lack of history and properly educated professional role models for journalists to follow. So this has led to the buildup of journalists and journalism playing an unclear role in Romanian society. Moving on to a discussion of media transparency and media transparency issues related to the media in Romania. Similar to many other media environments in states throughout the world, it was found that non-transparent media practices are present in Romania. In a study of Romanian journalists, it was found that despite a general consensus by a majority of Romanian journalists and public relations practitioners that non-transparent media activities are tolerable. They also tended to feel that the acceptance of money for reported news coverage was unethical, though. Furthermore, one of the more frequent non-transparency practices conducted by the Romanian media occurs when their sales departments for advertising make determinations as to the news that will be published and which sources will be reflected in the news. Unfortunately, Romania's transparency level is not reflected on the Krugberg and Titsura Global Index of Media Bribery. However, given the historical and social similarities to many of their neighboring nations, some lines may be able to be drawn to give an estimation of the range that Romania's transparency level might fall into. Note with the rankings posted on the right-hand side of the chart that the ranking levels fall between 1 and 33. So as you can see, a lot of the neighboring states fall into that mid to lower mid-level, with Hungary falling at the top and Ukraine coming in at the bottom of that ranking. Shifting next to major theories, theoretical approaches, frameworks for Romanian media. Starting with media and information literacy policies in Romania. The theory addresses the technology and media literacy education developments and challenges in Romania. Among the conclusions made in the work, it recognized that Romania has made advancements in developing media literacy, but the authors believe that they do not understand the necessity for developing media education in its full breadth. The next notable framework is Romanian media in the light of media sustainability. This theoretical framework focuses on media sustainability index research that is administered by the Romanian press. In doing this, the aim of the work is to deliver a comparative view on indicators that reside in the Romanian media environment in order to bring meaning to notion of sustainable media and identify strengths and weaknesses of the Romanian press. And the final notable work shown here is of journalists and money, the employment of journalists in Romania and its influence on media freedom and quality. This work takes into consideration the developing independence and freedoms of Romania, while examining the relationship between Romanian journalists, media employers, and political agents. Additionally, the approach further examines the various methods under which Romania's media structure is impacted by salary levels, market changes, political pressures, monetary shifts, and how these elements impact the output of journalists' reporting. Looking next at the status of journalism education in the country. In many Western nations, formal journalism training and education are necessary steps for becoming a journalist. However, in Romania, journalists typically lack a professional education and instead rely on on-the-job training to develop their skill set. An additional cause for concern with this type of vocational training system is that a majority of media outlets fail to conduct design training or develop training departments to aid in the development of their new media personnel. Instead, new hires are often coached by their more experienced colleagues and supervisors and are generally expected to learn the craft by doing the job. And unfortunately, this leads to a lot of trial and error. Furthermore, without the constraints of a required education, belief formed within Romania that there was equal opportunity to become a journalist. However, in many cases, editors make hiring decisions at their own discretion. Moving on to trends in media professionalization and practices, and looking at some of the main challenges for media in Romania. As mentioned earlier, Romania's media had grown at a nearly exponential pace in the aftermath of their late 1980s transition, which lifted restrictions on speech and media. However, like most of the globalized world, Romania has realized two impacting factors to their media landscape in the past decade: the Great Recession and the evolution of digital media. The first of these, the Great Recession, caused sharp declines in Romania's media advertising revenue. Naturally, this has thus led to declined salary levels. Additionally, since the recession, very few of Romania's media outlets have remained profitable. And as I'd mentioned, the second factor, the evolution of digital media, is increasingly creating change within Romania's media landscape. And as I'd mentioned in my introduction, the spike in cell phone usage can be related to this as well, as Romanians are increasingly more capable of accessing media everywhere. And the chart here, it just shows that the percentage of individuals using the internet is pretty self-evident there, that in 2000 it was only about 3.6%, but now well over half of people in the country are now accessing the internet. Looking next at the status of female journalists in Romania. Romania's female journalists have steadily increased in numbers since the transition away from the Soviet bloc in the 1990s. With this increase, women now hold a majority of the jobs in Romania's media market. However, men still hold approximately 70% of the management position at Romanian media organizations. Nonetheless, women still outnumber men in print media, television, and as reporters. The only media segment where men have continued to outnumber women is in the radio market. And speaking toward what the opportunities and challenges women professionals face in the media, I would say that in Romania there's very little as far as legal implications that are holding women up or anything of that nature. It's more of those limitations that are set by editors or people hiring at their own discretion that cause that disparity between how many women are becoming the upper level managers and how many women are just regressing or staying at the entry levels of the media market. So, how does the media of Romania contribute to global media discourse? Number one, they have transparency issues. Pay for play is a normally occurring event. Romania's journalists are known for their regular acceptance of this non-transparent practice. Additionally, corporations and political alliances are known to impact the media environment. Second, with 5 bordering countries, strategic location between the EU and Russia, and a plethora of broadcast media outlets, Romania's position and capabilities make them influential in the global media. And finally, Romania's acceptance into the European Union in 2007 has given the country an increased platform to be noticed on. This concludes my presentation on Romania media environment, and the following slides are just the works cited that were utilized in the presentation. Thank you.